All right, what's up, everyone? So I want to make a follow-up to the video that I made about gun control and why gun control is unconstitutional, why it is a policy that simply does not work, and why I am opposed to any gun control legislation, including fully automatic weapons, semi-automatic weapons, anything of the sort. Well, someone responded to me, an individual that I actually happen to know in real life, who said that, you're a hypocrite. This is the only point he actually had against me. The only, I guess you could say, valid point, even though it's not, because I'm going to explain why it's not in this video. But he said that my point's not valid because I'm a hypocrite when it comes to gun control. Because while I'm opposed to gun control when it comes to fully automatic weapons, when it comes to semi autos, pistols, shotguns, etc., I do support regulation against explosives, against grenades, against RPGs, tanks, all that stuff. So therefore, because I support that, then I'm basically admitting that gun control to an extent does work, right? Well, I'm going to explain why that is not the case and why those are two completely separate things. We actually know that because of our founding fathers. You see, even though our founding fathers are not alive today, and they haven't been alive for a very long time, they were alive during the late 1700s, early 1800s, when certain laws were passed and certain issues came up, namely the regulation of cannons and artillery. There was actually a lot of regulation when it came to that. There was the Naval Act of 1794, which basically established naval bases and basically established the Navy as a branch of the military. Now, during that regulation, a part of that law was that individual citizens, such as you and me, are not allowed to own artillery cannons, and that was a law that was passed. And guess what? Nobody had a problem with that because it's completely sensible, and it was part of a basic understanding that arms and explosives, like arms and cannons, are two completely different categories. Because during that time, in 1794, when they regulated and basically banned the use of cannons by private citizens, in 1792 they passed a different law, the Militia Acts of 1792, which basically established that the president of the United States is able to call upon able-bodied citizens between the ages of 18 and 45 to fight as part of the militia. Because back then, even though we had the Navy, they were an established military branch, you still relied largely on militia to defend the country. And that was the whole point of the Second Amendment. The whole part where it says a well-regulated militia. The word regulated doesn't mean what the word regulated means today. Because you think regulation means, oh, we want to regulate, we want to restrict. But that's not necessarily what it meant back in the 1700s when the Second Amendment was written. But during that Militia Act of 1792 that I mentioned, yeah, it basically said that free citizens between the ages of 18 and 45, should have military grade muskets. And now the context of it was to defend the country against foreign invaders, because that was a big concern at the time, and rightfully so, because we had the War of 1812 not that long after. Now you might say, oh, well, yeah, back then it was different though. You had militias. Now we don't need militias anymore, so we should change the Second Amendment. Well, first of all, that doesn't make any sense. Because even though the military, oh yeah, we have a great military, we spend a shit ton of money, because we don't have access to basic health care, but we have trillions upon trillions of dollars every year going to the military. Yeah, I know how much we spend on the military. I know how good our military is. I'm very much aware of that. But on the other hand, the militia is still a very important aspect of the defense of the United States. Because when the founding fathers, and I mentioned this in the video, if you want like actual quotes that the founding fathers said, you should go to that video that I made. It's the first video on this channel. And I actually break down that the founding fathers didn't just envision a militia for self-defense against foreign invaders, but also if the government becomes tyrannical, then that is another thing that they can, that is another way that the Second Amendment can be utilized. And we need armed citizens in order to prevent the government from becoming basically overreaching their power and imposing their will upon the citizens, taking away their rights and all that. So yeah, I just it's such a basic, it's such an easy concept to understand, yet so many people just are not willing to. They just know it says regulated, so that means we need gun control. Like some people are just so hopeless. I don't know. There's really not much you can say to persuade these people. They're so set in their ways, so set in their beliefs, even if they're so very wrong. But yeah, arms and explosives are different things because while they were regulating cannons and artillery, they were not regulating muskets because muskets were the most advanced weaponry that they had at the time. And so that stands to reason that military grade assault weapons, which, you know, the whole way that they define that is just, it just keeps fluctuating. So that it's not even a valid metric in terms of regulating and passing gun laws. But yeah, it's just it's something that is a stupid point that people make, like, oh yeah, you talk about how gun laws are unconstitutional and the right to bear arms, but should everybody have a tank? Of course you don't think that. So you're a hypocrite because you don't think that everybody should have a tank, but you do think that everyone should have an M4, M16, or whatever. So like how are you, like, how can you say that you're against gun control then? Look, there's a difference. Even if someone decides to go crazy and go off with a fully automatic weapon, even though the vast majority of mass shootings and mass killings are done with a pistol, but, you know, we talked about that already. The thing is that you can stop someone if they have a gun, right? If they're a bad person with a gun, a good person with a gun can stop them. When we're talking about tanks, when we're talking about RPGs, it's a lot more difficult to contend with because not everyone's going to be walking around the mall with an RPG, even though that's, honestly, now that I'm thinking about that, that kind of is a badass thing if everyone just walks around like this with the RPG. Okay, so maybe I take that back. Maybe everyone should have an, no. I think that it just doesn't, it's a separate thing. Explosives and arms are separate. It seems like something that's so common sense, but people are, oh, right to bear arms, but what about the grenade launch? Because they have nothing else to argue. So they go to that. They try to find kinks in your armor, but there are none. I am completely bulletproof, baby. And it's like, do I need to explain the difference between... What the fuck? What are you barking at? Fucking stupid bitch.